What if I told you that a single deficiency in a molecule your body can't produce on its own could quietly shrink your brain, dull your memory, and drain your energy, even if you're eating healthy? And what if optimizing just a few key vitamins daily could reverse that, enhancing your focus, mood, and even protecting you against age decline? This isn't hype, it's what the science is increasingly confirming. Certain vitamins aren't just nice to have, they're non-negotiable if you want your brain and body to function at their best. Consider this. In a large longitudinal study from Oxford University, researchers found that older adults with low levels of vitamin B12 had significantly more brain atrophy over 5 years. That's literal shrinking of the brain, not from age, but from a simple correctable deficiency. Similarly, multiple meta-analyses now link low vitamin D levels with impaired cognitive function, mood disturbances, and increased risk of Alzheimer's. These aren't exotic or obscure compounds. They're basic, yet they play a central role in everything from your energy metabolism to the electrical signals firing in your neurons. And many people, even those eating a whole food diet, are running low on them without realizing it. The good news, with the right daily intake of a few core vitamins, you can measurably enhance your cognition, stabilize your emotions, and improve your long-term physical resilience. So in today's episode, we're going to break down 6 specific vitamins that your brain and body absolutely need, and the neuroscience behind how they work. You'll learn the vitamin that fuels your mitochondria and why without it, your energy crashes, the overlooked nutrient that acts like a mood stabilizer for your brain, a vitamin your nervous system requires to repair itself, and how to use simple, science-backed protocols to optimize your intake without megadosing or guesswork. We'll explore what the latest research shows, what's happening in your brain when these nutrients are present, and what happens when they're missing. Let's get into the science and unlock tools that can transform your mental clarity, emotional balance, and long-term vitality. Have you ever walked into a room and forgotten why you went in there? Not just once, but consistently? Or felt mentally foggy despite getting enough sleep and eating well? While many factors can contribute to that, one of the most overlooked is a deficiency in vitamin B12, a micronutrient your nervous system absolutely depends on. Vitamin B12, or cobalamin, is essential for the formation of myelin, the insulating sheath that wraps around your nerves. Think of myelin as the protective coating on an electrical wire. Without it, the brain's communication network starts to glitch. Signals slow down, reactions dull, memory starts to fade. And the most fascinating part? You often don't feel it happening until it's progressed far enough to impair daily functioning. Here's what the research shows. In a landmark study from Oxford University, elderly individuals with even marginally low B12 levels experienced significantly more brain atrophy over 5 years. That's measurable shrinkage in brain volume. And it wasn't from aging alone. It was preventable. And it's not just older adults. Younger people following plant-based or low-meat diets are increasingly showing signs of B12 insufficiency, often presenting as low energy, poor concentration, or mood dysregulation. What's happening in your brain when B12 is deficient? Without enough B12, a compound called homocysteine builds up. High levels of homocysteine are neurotoxic, associated with increased risk of Alzheimer's, depression, and vascular damage. B12 acts as a biochemical cleanup crew, converting homocysteine into methionine, which your body uses to produce neurotransmitters and repair DNA. And here's a fascinating study from the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition. Individuals who normalized their B12 levels through supplementation showed improvements in both memory and reasoning speed in as little as 8 to 12 weeks. So how do you apply this? A simple tool to apply is this. Get your B12 levels tested, especially if you're over 40. Eat little meat or feel unexplained fatigue or cognitive slowness. Look for serum B12, But also consider methylmalonic acid, MMA, a more sensitive marker of functional deficiency. Use the right form. Look for methylcobalamin, the active form of B12 that crosses the blood-brain barrier more efficiently than cyanocobalamin. Optimal dosage, most people do well with 250 to 500 milligram daily if supplementing orally. For those with absorption issues, common with age or certain gut conditions, sublingual or even injection-based B12 may be necessary. Always work with a clinician to personalize this. One practical protocol. If you're vegan or vegetarian, daily B12 supplementation is essential. No exceptions. Fortified foods help, but they're often not enough. For omnivores, include B12-rich foods like grass-fed beef, liver, eggs, and sardines several times a week. But don't assume food alone is enough, especially as you age. Have you noticed days where your thinking just feels slower, more effortful, like your brain's trying to operate through static? That's often what early stage B12 deficiency feels like. Subtle, but impactful. Now, the empowering part, B12 is entirely reversible when caught early. Supporting your cognitive health is not just about doing more. Sometimes it's about giving your brain what it needs to function. If this kind of insight is helping you tune into your body more intelligently, consider subscribing. We break down science like this every week to help you build a sharper, stronger brain. Now we'll move into vitamin D and what's happening in your brain and body when this powerful neuromodulator is optimized or missing. We often think of vitamin D as the bone health vitamin, but your brain sees it differently. In the brain, vitamin D functions more like a hormone, one that influences how genes are expressed, how neurons communicate, and even how resilient you are to stress. What's happening in your brain when vitamin D is low? To start, vitamin D receptors are present in multiple areas of the brain, especially those related to memory, mood, and executive function. These include the prefrontal cortex, hippocampus, and amygdala. When D levels drop, gene expression in those regions changes. Neurotransmitter synthesis can slow, inflammation increases, and neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to adapt and grow, is impaired. A 2018 meta-analysis published in Neurology found that individuals with low serum vitamin D were at significantly higher risk of cognitive impairment, even after adjusting for age, education, and physical activity. Another study from the Journal of Affective Disorders linked low vitamin D levels to increased risk of depression, anxiety, and seasonal affective disorder, SAD. The mechanism? Vitamin D helps regulate enzymes involved in producing serotonin and dopamine, the very neurotransmitters that govern mood and motivation. It also modulates inflammatory cytokines in the brain, reducing neuroinflammation, which is increasingly understood as a driver of depression and cognitive decline. And here's where it gets empowering. You don't need mega doses, you need consistency and smart timing. A simple tool to apply is this. Get your blood levels tested. The optimal range for brain health appears to be 40 to 60 m/ml. Many people hover well below that, especially in winter or if they work indoors. If supplementing, aim for 2,000 to 5,000 IU daily, depending on your baseline and sunlight exposure. The D3 form, cholecalciferol, is more bioavailable than D2. Pair it with vitamin K2, particularly MK7, which helps direct calcium to the bones and out of soft tissues like arteries or the brain. Now, here's a simple protocol you can implement today. In the morning, go outside within 30 to 60 minutes of waking and get 10 to 20 minutes of sunlight exposure on your skin and eyes, without sunglasses, if possible. This supports your body's natural D production and synchronizes your circadian rhythm, boosting alertness and mood. On darker days, or if you live in a northern latitude, consider supplementing in the morning, not at night, as it can interfere with melatonin and sleep quality in some individuals. Now, here's something you might not expect. In people with major depression who were vitamin D deficient, supplementation improved mood outcomes, sometimes to a similar degree as antidepressants, according to a 2014 review in Nutritional Neuroscience. That doesn't mean D is a cure-all, but it is a critical piece of the mood puzzle, and one that often gets overlooked. If you've been feeling chronically low energy, foggy, or emotionally flat, especially in the winter months, it's worth asking, what are my vitamin D levels doing? Because this isn't just about physical health, it's about emotional resilience, mental clarity, and long-term cognitive performance. One final note, most people don't associate a daily walk in the sun with sharper memory or more stable moods. But biologically, that's exactly what you're supporting. Your brain is a sun-sensitive organ. If this resonated with you and you're starting to see how deeply these vitamins shape your mental state and performance, consider hitting the like button. It tells the algorithm this kind of science matters, and it helps others discover the tools you're now learning to use. Now, we'll explore folate, vitamin B9, and how it shapes the very structure of your thoughts through DNA expression and neurotransmitter regulation. There's a quiet architect behind your brain's development, your mood, your memory, and even your ability to think clearly, and its name is folate. Folate, also known as vitamin B9, plays a role so foundational that without it, your brain's very blueprint, your DNA methylation patterns can start to go off track. What does that mean? In real life, it means cognitive fog, reduced neuroplasticity, and in more serious cases, a significantly increased risk of depression, neurodegeneration, and poor stress response. Let's unpack what's happening beneath the surface. Folate is crucial for a biochemical cycle called one-carbon metabolism. This cycle is the backstage system that fuels neurotransmitter production, especially serotonin, dopamine, and norepinephrine. These aren't just feel-good chemicals, they're your motivational engine, emotional stability system, and executive function regulators. In a study published in the Journal of Psychiatry and Neuroscience, individuals with major depressive disorder were found to have significantly lower blood folate levels than healthy controls. Moreover, those who supplemented with methylfolate, the bioactive form, experienced improved outcomes when used alongside SSRIs. This suggests folate isn't just helpful for mood, it may amplify the effectiveness of other interventions by restoring key neurotransmitter pathways. Another study from Tufts University linked low folate levels to cognitive decline in older adults, showing reductions in memory performance and executive function over time. But perhaps the most telling finding? These changes were reversible when folate was restored. And yet, many people, especially those with a common genetic variation in the MTHFR gene, can't efficiently convert synthetic folic acid, often found in fortified foods, into active L-methylfolate, the form the brain can actually use. A simple tool to apply is this. Look for L-methylfolate on supplement labels, not folic acid. This form bypasses the MTHFR bottleneck and ensures your brain gets what it needs. If supplementing 400 to 800 max PMGs per day is a common therapeutic dose, but always check with a health professional, especially if you're on medications. Focus on folate-rich foods like dark leafy greens, avocados, lentils, asparagus, and beets, but know that cooking can destroy some of the folate content. So eating a mix of raw and cooked is ideal. Here's a useful protocol. Include a daily serving of raw greens like spinach or arugula, and one serving of a legume or folate-rich vegetable. If you're pregnant, planning to become pregnant, or dealing with chronic stress or low mood, consider methylfolate supplementation under professional guidance. Have you ever noticed how your ability to emotionally regulate feels harder during high-stressed weeks? Almost like your patience is worn thin and your mental bandwidth has shrunk? That's not just psychology, it's biochemistry. Folate helps produce SAMe, sadenosylmethionine, a compound your brain uses to regulate mood and process stress. Low folate equals low SAMe, and the mental exhaustion that often follows. The empowering part is this. Optimizing folate levels isn't just about mood. It's about resilience, mental resilience, emotional resilience, and cognitive resilience. Folate gives your brain the raw materials to regenerate, to adapt, and to regulate under pressure. And when you give your biology what it needs, performance improves naturally, not through force, but through support. If you're finding these insights useful, consider subscribing. This channel exists to give you the tools science has already uncovered, tools most people are never taught, so you can optimize your brain, body, and life with clarity and confidence. Now we'll look at a vitamin you probably associate with immunity, but that your brain uses in surprising and powerful ways. Vitamin C, the neuroprotective antioxidant. Most people associate vitamin C with immunity, maybe a glass of orange juice when you're feeling run down. But here's the deeper truth. Your brain is actually one of the most concentrated sites of vitamin C in the entire body, and it uses it for far more than warding off colds. In fact, your brain actively transports vitamin C across the blood-brain barrier and stores it in the neurons of the hippocampus and cortex, the very regions responsible for memory, focus, and emotional regulation. What's happening in your brain when vitamin C is low? Without enough vitamin C, your brain struggles to protect itself against oxidative stress, the cellular damage that occurs when metabolic waste and inflammatory molecules build up. Over time, this accelerates neural aging, increases susceptibility to neurodegenerative disease, and weakens neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to grow, adapt, and form new connections. A study published in Frontiers in Aging Neuroscience showed that people with higher vitamin C levels had better memory performance and cognitive function compared to those with deficiency. Another study out of Oregon State University linked chronic low vitamin C intake with increased risk of cognitive impairment, even in middle age. But here's where it gets especially fascinating. Vitamin C isn't just an antioxidant. It's also a cofactor for the synthesis of dopamine and norepinephrine, two neurotransmitters central to your motivation, focus, and stress response. What that means is simple but powerful. When you're deficient in vitamin C, your ability to produce energy, regulate mood, and handle pressure may all suffer, even if you're doing everything else right. A simple tool to apply is this. Aim for at least 200 to 300 milligrams of vitamin C per day. That's well above the outdated RDA, but supported by studies showing cognitive and antioxidant benefits. Choose whole food sources when possible. Kiwis, bell peppers, citrus, strawberries, broccoli, and Brussels sprouts are among the highest. If supplementing, look for buffered or liposomal forms for better absorption and less stomach irritation, especially at higher doses. Here's a practical protocol. Start your morning with a vitamin C rich food like a kiwi, half a grapefruit, or a handful of strawberries. Consider adding a 500 milligram supplement mid-morning on days when you're under stress or recovering from illness, since cortisol and inflammation both deplete vitamin C stores rapidly. For active individuals or those doing intense cognitive work, split doses throughout the day to maintain stable plasma levels. Have you noticed how mental fatigue tends to hit harder during times of high stress, poor diet, or illness? That's not just a coincidence. Stress increases the production of free radicals in the brain, and vitamin C is one of your brain's primary lines of defense. And for those navigating anxiety, depression, or burnout, here's a subtle but important insight. When oxidative stress in the brain rises, the function of your prefrontal cortex declines, which means your emotional regulation, impulse control, and decision-making weaken. Vitamin C helps counteract that process, creating more space for clarity, calm, and intention. It's one of the few nutrients that supports your emotional and cognitive resilience directly, not just through mood chemistry, but by protecting the cellular integrity of your brain itself. If that insight sparks something for you, consider sharing this video or dropping a comment below. Every interaction helps this content reach more people who might be silently struggling with low energy, low focus, or low mood, all because of simple, correctable nutritional gaps. Now we'll explore vitamin E, the cellular shield, and how it protects your neurons from aging, inflammation, and decline. Imagine your brain as a high-performance machine, operating nonstop, processing thousands of thoughts per day, and coordinating complex emotions, behaviors, and memories. Now, imagine the machinery being slowly corroded by invisible sparks, oxidative stress, inflammation, and lipid damage. That's where vitamin E steps in. Vitamin E isn't just a nice-to-have antioxidant. It's your brain's frontline defense against oxidative damage to neurons, especially the lipid-rich cell membranes that form the structure of your nervous system. What's happening in your brain when vitamin E is deficient? Your neurons, particularly the myelin sheath and mitochondrial membranes, are rich in polyunsaturated fats, which are highly susceptible to oxidation. When free radicals attack these fats, the damage can disrupt synaptic transmission, impair memory, and accelerate neurodegenerative processes. Over time, this oxidative wear and tear is linked to faster cognitive decline, especially in aging brains. And the evidence is compelling. A study published in JAMA found that high-dose vitamin E supplementation slowed the progression of Alzheimer's disease in patients with mild to moderate symptoms by preserving activities of daily living longer than placebo. Another study in neurobiology of aging showed that higher blood levels of alpha tocopherol, the most active form of vitamin E, were associated with better memory and executive function in older adults. But this isn't just about aging. Even in younger adults, low vitamin E has been correlated with increased neural inflammation, reduced reaction times, and poorer stress adaptation, especially during times of elevated mental or physical strain. So what's the practical takeaway? A simple tool to apply is this. Ensure you're getting at least 15 CMF 22 IUs of natural vitamin E daily, preferably in the form of mixed tocopherols, not just alpha tocopherol. Focus on vitamin E-rich whole foods like almonds, sunflower seeds, hazelnuts, spinach, avocado, and olive oil. These provide synergistic nutrients that support absorption and function. If supplementing, choose a natural form labeled D-alpha tocopherol, not DL-alpha, which is synthetic and less bioavailable. And pair it with healthy fats. Since vitamin E is fat soluble, it needs dietary fat to be absorbed properly. Here's a protocol that works well. Add a small handful of almonds or sunflower seeds as a midday snack, especially useful during cognitively demanding periods. Use cold-pressed olive oil on salads or cooked vegetables, not just for flavor, but for neuroprotection. If supplementing, take it with a meal containing healthy fats like eggs, salmon, or avocado to maximize uptake. Have you ever experienced days where your brain just feels dull? Not tired, not emotional, just slightly less sharp, like the contrast has been turned down? That subtle dimming may in part be oxidative stress at work, gradually impairing the clarity of neural signaling. Here's the empowering part. By consistently supplying your brain with vitamin E, you're not just avoiding damage, you're building a biochemical buffer against age, stress, and inflammation. And the benefits extend beyond the brain. Vitamin E supports cellular health across your cardiovascular system, skin, and immune function, making it a silent force multiplier for whole body vitality. If you're finding this series valuable, now's a great time to subscribe. We break down the kind of science that most people never get access to and turn it into tools you can use every day. Let's dive into the final nutrient in this series, magnesium, the neurocalming mineral, and explore how it helps balance your brain chemistry, calm the nervous system, and deepen sleep and recovery. If there's one nutrient that acts like nature's neurological brake pedal, it's magnesium. Magnesium is involved in over 300 enzymatic reactions in the body, but in the brain, it plays a uniquely calming role. It regulates how neurons fire, how muscles contract, and how your nervous system resets after stress. Without enough of it, your brain becomes hyperreactive, your sleep becomes shallow, and your mood begins to fray. And here's what's happening in your brain when magnesium is low. Magnesium acts as a natural NMDA receptor blocker, preventing excessive calcium from flooding into neurons. When levels are too low, NMDA receptors become overactivated. That leads to neuronal excitotoxicity, a fancy term for neurons that get overstimulated to the point of damage or burnout. This overexcitability can manifest as anxiety, insomnia, brain fog, irritability, or even migraines. A landmark study published in Neuropharmacology showed that magnesium deficiency increased susceptibility to stress, while adequate magnesium intake buffered the brain's response, lowering cortisol, stabilizing mood, and enhancing resilience. Another double-blind, placebo-controlled trial in the Journal of the American Board of Family Medicine found that magnesium supplementation significantly improved symptoms of mild to moderate depression, especially in individuals who were previously deficient. So why are so many people low in magnesium? The problem is modern living, chronic stress, poor soil quality, processed foods, caffeine, alcohol, and intense exercise all deplete magnesium. Even if you're eating well, the combination of high output and low intake puts many people in a subclinical deficiency state where performance and recovery suffer, even without obvious symptoms. A simple tool to apply is this. Aim for at least 300 to 400 mlg of magnesium per day, ideally through a combination of food and supplementation. Choose magnesium-rich foods, pumpkin seeds, spinach, almonds, black beans,